Our inner self is the part of us that has the ability to sense peace, or not. Our inner self is the part of us that listens to our intuition, or not. Our inner self is the part of us that can connect to Source, or not. Our inner self is always there, always present, always alert, and it is a normal, natural, ordinary part of our being. And yet, many people live their entire life totally unaware of their inner self. This is understandable. There is nothing in physical reality that can validate the existence of the inner self. It cannot be measured and it cannot be observed. The outer self, our body, our thoughts, our emotions, our words, our actions, are all observable by others. So this is the part of our being that gets validated. The needs of our outer self are so demanding, so urgent, so relentless, they consume our total time and attention. So why would anyone waste their precious time on something that's invisible? Because Shakespeare was right. All the world is a stage, and all the men and women merely players. When our heart stops beating and our brain neurons stop firing, this movie is over. We take nothing with us when we leave this world. Our relationships, our accomplishments, and all of our blood, sweat, and tears are done. But we are not done. We still exist. The part of us that continues to exist is our inner self. It does not die. It cannot die. It is eternal. It is our real self, our true self. And when we become conscious of our inner self before our body dies, not only do we have the ability to completely transform our lives, our inner self has the opportunity to transform as well. Like an acorn becoming a tree, we evolve. In my book, I Am Consciousness, I refer to the inner self as the observer self, because when our attention is totally consumed by outer responsibilities, our inner self functions primarily as a passive observer. But once we start exploring this part of our being, we discover that our inner self is much more than an observer. The only way to prove the existence of the inner self is to experience it firsthand. And once we have experienced it, there's nothing to debate. The inner self is our consciousness. It is our awareness. And it is separate and distinct from our physical body, our emotions, and our intellect. The purpose of this video is to share with you a quick and easy technique that will not only give you an experience of your inner self as the observer, it will empower you to recreate this experience consciously anytime you choose. It is designed to bridge the gap between intellectual comprehension and direct experience. But to do this, we must first discard the belief that accessing this state requires years of meditation. It does not. This state of being is a normal, natural, ordinary part of everyday life that we all experience without being aware of it. What we are doing here is learning how to consciously experience something that we already experience unconsciously. Basically, how we observe the inner self is by creating a present moment, no thought state of awareness. This is not difficult. A good example of this in everyday life is the act of bathing. If, while bathing, we are thinking about the past or focusing on our to-do list, we miss the experience. The simple act of enjoying a bath requires that we be in the present moment. And this experience is nonverbal. The sensation of water on our skin cannot be described in words because it is not an intellectual concept. It is an experience, a present moment, no thought experience. Learning to consciously perceive the inner self is just as easy and just as effortless as enjoying a bath. Are you ready? Let's do this. Put your feet flat on the floor, close your eyes, and inhale deeply all the way down to your pelvic floor. Relax deeply. Exhale. And inhale again, slowly and deeply. Relax into your breathing. Now, become aware of your thoughts. Don't try to control them or stop them. Just relax and notice them. Imagine your thoughts as if they were clouds floating in the sky. Are there just a few clouds, or is the sky totally overcast? Are they moving slowly? Fast? What color are they? Relax into your breathing. Now, very gently, Zoom out and expand your vision to include the whole sky, all the clouds at once. Notice all the patterns and shapes. Now, become the sky. Imagine that you are the sky. Be the sky. This is it. You are now in a state of present moment, no thought. Your body is still, your emotions are still, and your thoughts are still. What remains is the part of you that is not still, the part of you that is always alert and watching. This is your observer self, your inner self, your awareness. This is your consciousness. Now, open your eyes and stay in this state. Notice that this part of your being is separate and distinct from your physical body, your emotions, and your intellect. Spiritual masters regard this experience of becoming aware of awareness, where our consciousness becomes conscious of itself, as a major achievement in spiritual growth. But most of us, after a few seconds, pull out of the experience thinking, so what? This is ordinary, normal, and boring. What's the point? Been there, done that. But we haven't been anywhere, and we haven't done anything except have a tactile experience of the part of our being that is separate and distinct from our physical body, our emotions, and our intellect. And because we've had this experience, we now have the ability to recognize our inner self, which means we can place our attention on our inner self anytime we choose, as easily as we shift our gaze. When we gaze within, we can discover the source of life itself. When we open our eyes, our inner self can become part of our physical reality. It is possible to be aware of our inner self while we live our busy lives. Doing this starts an integration process that comes with an interesting learning curve. One of the first things we notice when we start consciously hanging out with our inner self is that our intuition, the still small voice within, speaks to us through our inner self, not the intellect. It doesn't take long for us to notice that this intuitive guidance coming through our inner self is much more accurate and helpful than the choices we make using our outer intellect. So when decisions arise, we start choosing the inner over the outer. But because perceptions from our inner self are co-mingled with perceptions from our outer self, it takes practice to discriminate the difference between them, especially because so much of our outer behavior is unconscious. When we get an idea, it's up to us to figure out if it is a prompting from our intuition or if it is an unresolved emotional issue, a habit, a memory, preverbal conditioning, or low blood sugar. Here's a hint. Intuitive promptings can be felt in the heart, whereas ideas from the outer self come from the head. Also, intuitive promptings usually feel extraordinarily calm and peaceful, whereas ideas from the outer self don't. But even knowing this, there still is a learning curve, so don't be hard on yourself when you make mistakes. No one learns to walk without falling down. You'll get better at it, and soon you'll discover the still small voice within is neither still nor small. In my book, I talk about this in more detail, but words can only point you in the right direction. Exploring the inner self can only be done by first-hand experience. For me, the journey is similar to when I was a toddler, learning how to walk, to feed myself, to dress, to ride a bike. It's something that we can only learn on our own. To live life keeping our inner self passive, relying solely on our intellect, is like running in a hamster wheel, acting and reacting to endless life situations. When we master the ability to clearly distinguish the difference between our intuitive inner promptings and our outer intellect, not only will our inner self be in the driver's seat, we will be able to sustain a conscious connection with Source. We will have the ability to sense peace and harmony regardless of outer circumstances. This is achievable. It is why we are here. It is what we came here to learn. Remember, the inner self is not our intuition. It has the ability to access our intuition. And the inner self is not our source. It has the ability to connect to Source. We can listen to our intuition or not. We can connect to Source or not. Every minute of every day, our attention is focused on something. We have free will. We choose what we do with it. I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I wish you the best on your journey.